Hello, everybody. This is Sarah Colato of Architecture Talk Tank. Today, my guest is Fabio Palvelli, and I'm super excited to have Fabio in with me because we're going to be talking about interesting things. Fabio's career has developed. He's also an architect. He works within the visualization industry. If you haven't yet heard about his work online, then it's really worth checking it out, but you'll find out more also through this conversation. And he has a lot of background within marketing, but also as an entrepreneur. And we're going to talk specifically today about the importance and the value of consultancy for architects and how you can look at yourself not only as a skillful person, but knowledgeable person and actually monetize on your knowledge. But first things first, Fabio, thank you so much for joining me on this Architecture Talk Tank. Let's maybe start with a little introduction. Would you tell us a little bit more about yourself, who you are, and what you're doing?
So, Sarah, thanks a lot for having me here. Maybe to my bio, you should add that I have a very bad sense of humor, but let's people judge. They can go to my YouTube channel and see some of my videos. So as we were discussing this before going live, it's probably better for people to understand what I do and who I am to sort of like give a little bit of an intro to what I've done in my life so that they can get sort of like a general idea. So I studied architecture. I did that in London. And during that time, I started to develop an interest for 3D technologies. Then I moved to Vienna, where I did a master in building engineering. And because I did not speak German at the time, one thing that I had to do, I had to stand on my feet and figure out a way to support myself. And so I started to teach 3D programs to people, making workshops, offering courses at university, offering courses through the city of Vienna. You know that they have these programs where they, if you lose your job, you can apply and get grants and do that. And so I did that. And I basically did this for also in parallel with me working as a designer and as a 3D artist up until 2017. Actually, around that time, I got a job working for the makers of V-Ray Chaos Group. The company at the time where I was working was a separate company because I was working for the Cinema 4D division. And so, we were working in Vienna. Then I actually got hired from the guys in Bulgaria. So I worked there for a year, more or less. And during that time, I was also going around offices in Europe to teach V-Ray to architects and designers. And around that time, I realized that there was a big issue in terms of like how much business related knowledge there was in the field of visualization. And so a lot of times these workshops started out as V-Ray or 3D workshops, and they would become like sort of business boot camps where I would teach people how to, earn more money, have better relationships with their clients, understand sales, marketing, and all that kind of stuff. I worked in marketing. That was one of the main things that I did during my time at the Chaos Group and at V-Ray for Cinema 4D. But I also learned marketing on my own because one of the main things that actually has put me on the map is the D2 conference, which is this conference that we have organized. Initially, it was only for architectural visualizer people, and now it has become a full digital design conference. We have had very important speakers over the years, to name a few. Mike Winkelmann-Beeple, who became very famous with the NFTs and everything. Ash Thorpe, we had Nikita Diakur, we had a lot of big names that ended up becoming huge in their own professions as digital designers and whatnot. So this should give you sort of like an idea of who I am. I don't like to put a label on me because it's kind of limiting. And, I'm a man of contradictions because every time that I start a video, I say I'm a 3D designer and artist when actually I do a lot more than that. But maybe I can explain it during this conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think this is partially what's interesting is the more we sort of evolve from like a one label and follow our passion, but also give value to people in many different ways. It enriches our business, us as human beings, and also it can contribute to growth of an industry. And I think that, first and foremost, what's really worth mentioning is that you represent a niche in architecture, which pretty much every single architect in some time of their development, of their education or their life or professional life has touched on. Because, of course, V-Ray and other rendering software is something that is always hovering above us, and some people go into it 100%. Some people will learn just a little bit, but pretty much every architect learns at some point nowadays to render. So that's one thing, but to commit completely to it is another, and it has become a almost like a freelancer trend. A lot of architects commit to visualization and just do renderings and decide that this is their path. And I know for a fact that Chaos Group is a very adamant promoter also of actually supporting this freelance economy and people and educating around business. And that's exactly what you mentioned, that when you worked back there for them, you were helping people actually understand how to get projects and acquire clients online and things like that. So going back to the idea of business, there is niche, but then also somehow throughout your life, you developed many different legs of that business. Would you tell us a little bit more about that? Of course, now we know that the conference is one of these legs, but there is more. So tell us a little bit more about that and how that all came to be.
Sure, of course. So I'm still designing, and lately I got very involved in the world of NFTs. There are a lot of interesting projects that are emerging, in relationship to the new economy, the so-called new economy. And there is a lot to be done in that field, because basically what Corona has done has accelerated the process of for us to go more and more digital. And we probably don't realize it, but you and I are having a conversation and we're streaming it to I don't know how many people live using technology. I am a university teacher. I teach at the University of St. Pölten New Design University in Vienna. I teach social media design and marketing. I also own a company that does trainings. We work mainly with the city of Vienna. Actually, this is the company that I started working at, sorry, and then we ended up buying the company. Then I do the conference. I do consulting work, a lot of consulting work for small, medium-sized visualization companies. I help them with client acquisition, marketing, positioning, and all that kind of stuff. And what else? I guess that's it.
That's very interesting. So actually, I wanted to talk about consulting. And the reason behind it is because I'm a big promoter of a sort of way of thinking about yourself as a person of value, right? To be able to compartmentalize and understand a little bit how this value grows within. And we're taught to be designers. We go to design school to learn problem solving through design, and we get good at it as the career develops. But in the traditional way of thinking about business, we're very used to thinking that this particular craft or skill gets us the money, and we exchange that for time and or our time doing this for money. And in the digital era that we live in, with so many different niches and so much going on business wise, we see more and more, especially in other industries outside of architecture, people actually going into consulting. And consulting sort of originates from this idea that all this knowledge that makes you a skillful designer has its own root, and it's skills and knowledge, and why not monetize on this knowledge, that expertise. And so all of this originated with time, and I think recently, not sure exactly how many years ago, but has been called the expert economy, or the business of expertise, and a lot of people are referring to that. And what we mean by it is really choosing a niche and providing value through consulting, and that doesn't limit you as to being a designer, but opens new possibilities. And Fabio, I just wanted to do a little introduction into it for our audience, but tell me a little bit about that whole experience of becoming a consultant and working with different teams, and what sort of opportunities that also holds for you, and how has that opened you up to business collaborations, and also what's interesting in that.
So when I started out offering consulting services, I did not do it with the intention of saying, okay, now I'm a consultant. People were calling me in because, maybe we had a workshop together, or maybe we had, we met at a conference or something, and they said, yeah, I really liked your take on that. And so how would you approach this? And so, it's, in my experience, people don't like the word consultant. They think it's somehow some snake oil seller or something, that you're doing something just to get some money quick. But the reality is that we use consultants almost on a daily basis. You go to a doctor is a consultant, is giving you sort of like a take on what you need to do to get better. You go to a person that helps you with your diet or your training, that is a consultant. You go to the post office to pay something, the person behind the counter is a consultant, is giving you very little knowledge, but is still a consultant. So we need to get out of these schemes where we think, okay, the word consultant is a negative word. I can tell you another thing. It's very funny because in the very beginning of my the starting of this consulting career, so to say, in 2017, I had people that did not give me the chance to tell other clients that we work together, because somehow working with a consultant was sort of like, oh, there's something wrong with my company. It's like, it used to be like this when you went to the psychologist 20 years ago, like you don't say that because there's something crazy or wrong with you. To me, it has been a very natural process. As a matter of fact, I tell you this, I don't even have a website. I mean, I'm creating a website now, but a lot of people, they come from mouth to mouth, like clients in our field, architecture visualization. A lot of people work together, so they know each other. Also, there is the content on YouTube, and that has been enough for me to get enough clients for me to sort of like make this side of my business significant. I do not work with a lot of clients. Also, the jobs they require, like, it's when we work on a project, it's usually a month that we do work together. So I can only dedicate my time to, on average, 5 to 6 clients per year. So it's not even like a lot of money that I make out of this, to be honest with you. But I do it because I really love it. I really love it. I have follow-up calls with my clients where they tell me, Fabio, now I see things differently. A lot of things make a lot more sense. Thank you. Just that ability to give a little bit of mental clarity to a person, it gives a different sense of purpose, and this is a sense of purpose that, for instance, when I was working with clients that just wanted, to move the window 10 centimeters to the right, that there was no purpose in that. Clients were just saying things because they felt like they had to tell them. And I've learned also that, over time. And so now I'm trying to teach it to my clients. How do you react to something like that? What is the type of conversation that you should be having? All these kind of things, to me, they were all like very natural and organic. I never had to force anything. I never had to, beg somebody to work with me. I never had to send an email to say, hey, I'm offering consulting services. I was lucky. And I was, blessed, if that's a good use of that word.
Absolutely. But now, obviously, you've had experience working with some bigger brands as well, and had great clients. And I think that this sort of grows to be not only you become better because you have a better sort of system that you implement when you start working with new clients. You know what worked, what didn't, maybe which sort of advice worked better or whatever. However, I think that with this experience as well, there is this whole new intake into that. And simple question: I know now you're developing your website, but are you using some of the advice that you give to your clients for your own business to acquire customers and to maintain that leg of a business, which is consultancy?
Yes, I do. I create a lot of content. Content, it's actually the king in today's society. If you do not know where to start, start with content. Like, this is really the basics of everything. Even if you do not have a clear idea, do make content, because content, it's self-regulatory. You're going to get feedback from the outside, and you're going to see what works and what doesn't. You need to have a little bit of thick skin, because you're going to get disappointed sometimes. People are going to say, hey, what the hell are you doing? But this happens to me as well. It still happens now. So it's all part of like getting into this feedback loop. And I do that. The majority of the things that I apply from the kind of advice that I give to my clients is what I do with the D2 conference. And the D2 conference, the last edition that we had was close to 565 people. This is a B2C conference, so people have to pay a ticket to go in. It's the biggest conference for that kind of stuff that we do on the planet. So you might say, yeah, well, but that's a different line of business. Business at the base, it's all the same. You might have some different dynamics, but the concepts and the main principles are the same all across the different spheres of how we do business. So I do apply the stuff that I say to my clients, and it does work. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just to remind yourself of what it is that you have to do, and it's actually really easy to achieve if you have that mental clarity.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's very important, and also it is just understanding and filling in for another gap in the market, which we have. That certainly lays with the topic of like lack of enough education on business, especially when we go deeper into marketing and then also digital marketing, digital transformation. But yeah, that definitely works, and I see that. The content creation and the conference is sort of walking this path of leading with expertise, providing value, educating, helping people, creating communities around this education as well. And tell me a little bit, how has that transformed you as a person and your business as well, since you started to give value through education?
Well, for me, the biggest thing, as I already mentioned, is that when I made the transition, when I stopped working in production in 2017, which is actually not completely true, because part of the work that I did also for the guys at Chaos Group and V-Ray was to still make images, and it was for internal purpose, but I still did that. Giving value to people has really changed my the fact that I was getting excited every time that we would have a meeting with a client. It made it more, it gave me more purpose. It it's like, it's a little bit difficult to describe it without sounding like a douchebag or a Facebook meme, but somebody that writes your message and say, Fabio, I am now able to support my entire family, because we made a little adjustment. And it's like, this changes you. It's something that you're like, wow, you can have that kind of impact on a person. And actually, this is not even coming from a client of mine. It's coming from people that watch my content and say, I started to do this, and now the conversation with my client, it's a lot better. Or I started to raise my prices. And I should say this, like the stuff that I try and tell people, it's very ethical. I do not teach any tricks or any uh, dodgy things to do. It's just that the conviction that a lot of people have going into our business, architectural visualization, is that you can figure out the job as you go along. But unfortunately, this is a reality that might have been true 25 or 30 years ago. Now we do have a system that it's in place. And so going into that system, trying to make a living, is like trying to participate to a poker game without knowing really the rules, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so this has been like my aim so far, to with the stuff that I was doing online, the content and everything. um, with that said, there are some people that are receptive to that message, and there are some people that say, hey, shut the hell up, like, we do not need to hear you. And that's fair enough. I think that ultimately people should always make their own decisions. This is also, we were discussing, you and I, before that, now I'm taking a break from social media. I do realize that because of the fact that I was able to produce this value and to place myself in that position in my segment, in my industry, that I was looking at people doing the wrong thing in a very judgmental way. And this was bad on my side, because it did not allow me to have that empathy to understand what those people were going through. And so,
Mm.
now I'm taking a little bit of time off. I'm trying to reset and regroup, so that if I do come back with more of this stuff, it needs to be a better message. Corona and COVID, they have sort of like accelerated that process, at least for me, and I hope for everybody, because it's like, it's been a very surreal time to have to go through, even as a business owner and as a human.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's very touching, actually extremely resonant with me, because I think that and it has definitely been quite a journey for me as well to start creating content and do this, what we're doing right now, because it's almost like coming out of your own shell. And most of my life, I didn't even have social media, really. I'm not the type of person that goes to have a nice fruit salad and posts that on Instagram.
I don't do that either.
so so actually I started most of my channels when I decided that I want to do consulting. And I did a consulting course, and I realized, okay, digital marketing is going to be a way for me to promote myself, and I want to do it through inviting speakers to this platform and have a podcast. But it took a lot, and I remember how stressed I was in the first interviews. But I think what's really touching is to speak of that point of empathy. It's certainly so extremely valid and important, and I think that it's something that you can't just turn it on. You have to experience it deeply to come to a place where you actually want to help without judgment, and really kind of feel compassion and understanding to another person. And it's like this evolution that happens within this profession to all of us. And I think that also that topic of social media alone, it's important to take breaks. And I myself being taught that whenever you produce content, you have to be super regular with it, because there's algorithms on every single platform that are working with this. And I just found it so hard to sign my name and soul under this. And from the beginning I said, I produce content when I feel like it. If I really, really feel like talking to someone, meeting new people and having these conversations, I will. And if I don't and I disappear for a few months, it's okay. Like I would expect for people to understand that. And there's always all the videos on demand if someone wants to catch up on old stuff. But that was my approach, to keep sane, because otherwise you really become a slave to this. Like every Tuesday you have to post, and every Friday, and every this and every that is too much. But the great thing is that this content circulates around, and I have noticed that the more I produce, the easier it was also for me to set it on automation, for it to be reposted at different social media platforms, and I didn't even have to be an active part of it anymore. And I think that what we're addressing now is probably as sort of maybe a limitation that a lot of architects might feel as to, oh, do I want to develop digital transformation, marketing, efforts to promote my business, my practice, myself, but I don't really feel like becoming an Instagrammer. What do I do? I think it's important to realize that you can kind of you can do both. You can still remain and live how you do, but use a lot of automative tools to help you also build an online presence, which is valuable right now. Fabio, tell me a little bit, or tell us a little bit about the conference alone. I'm super interested in that. How many years has it been since you've been running it, and when is the next event?
So the conference, we started in 2013. At the time, it wasn't called the D2, was called something else, and we stopped because of COVID in 2019. 2019 was the last edition. The first edition we had 54 people, I think, altogether. The last one we had 500 and I never remember if it's 65 or anyway, it was a much bigger number than the first one. And it started out because we had questions. We were like, I remember me and my partners were like, okay, how do you make those renderings that people seem to love so much? And what is the difference between a great render and a mediocre render from a client perspective? What is that a client is looking for when they want to work with us? And so we thought, okay, let's invite some of the best artists that we know. Let's see if they would agree to come and talk to us. And that's it. We did it without having in mind that we were going to build a business. We said, let's just do it for us. As at the time, we were running actually our own visualization company. And then over a short period of time, like 6 to 7 months, we realized, hey, we're sitting on something here. Maybe it might make a lot more sense if instead of focusing on a market that it's already getting crowded, which was the visualization market, we probably go and focus on something that it's not other people are doing. And so we said, okay, from now on, we're going to stop making visualizations and we're going to figure out ways to make better conferences. We did that. We started to organize conferences. We started to organize workshops underneath the same hat of the D2. And then after a while, the D2 became big enough for us to say, you know what? It makes no sense for us to do workshops. At the time, the online stuff wasn't really active yet and people were not buying into it. So we said, let's just make a huge festival for everybody to come and enjoy, and we'll just have fun. And so that was basically the life of the conference. Now, when you are immersed in all that knowledge by listening to 20 people every year talking about this stuff, and by making content and have continuous conversations, some of that stuff will rub off you, right? And this is how I started to get my own knowledge. Yeah, I hope that answered your question. I don't know. I talk a lot.
I love that you do, and it's so
if you
interesting.
get me started.
Thank you. Almost dropping my chin. Love what you're sharing, and I must admit that it's one, knowledge rubs off, but also I'm just in my head. I was just envisioning the possibilities you have through the conference to promote your visualization business and your consulting and all the other legs. And I think that what's really great is that when you or we all choose a niche we want to fully commit to, and start growing a really strong network within that niche with people that are equally passionate and also provide equally big value within this industry and start promoting each other, not only we contribute towards each other's knowledge and growth, we start understanding better what needs fixing in the business or in the industry and what we should focus on. But I think also it's basically really directly networking with clients, potential clients, and getting to understand better the needs that need to be faced, and that helps you shift your business to be very relevant, to the needs of your audience. And I think, just imagining this life and what you share in such a specific niche, specific industry, it's very interesting to see the potential possibilities that there are, and also to be almost like a pioneer of change, because through that network and through these yearly conversations that are happening about this, I'm sure you ask questions about what's next and what's tomorrow and how we can prepare for tomorrow better. So it's just the very few people that are so engaged within it that can actually contribute to a better tomorrow, and that definitely contributes again to business growth. So so that's tremendously interesting.
Can I just interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
You said something very important, and I can give you proof of that. In 2019, we had a speaker that came, visualization artist. He's also a teacher at Harvard. Eric de Broche is the principal of Luxigon. And during his presentation, one thing that he said, guys, sooner or later, we will have to, as architects, because he's also an architect, we will have to start thinking about creating new digital worlds and worlds. And I think that 90% of the people that were in the crowd, they absolutely dismissed that input. And now, almost 3 years later, we are seeing what that guy meant. The metaverse is now taking place. It's happening. And there are quite a few designers that I know who are not architects, who are not architecture visualization artists, that are going in that direction. And you might say, well, but the reward, it's very little. Why would I go into digital if the money is in construction? Let me give you a piece of information. So Louis Vuitton bought in Super World, or I might be wrong with that, but they bought digital estate in New York for $2 million. The metaverse is reality, is happening, it's gonna come. And there are already designers working on the Louis Vuitton store, on the Gucci store, because you can envision, like 2 or 3 years from now, when we're playing video games in real life and you're in GTA and you're playing and you're in New York, you suddenly can take a break from your game, go into the digital Louis Vuitton store and do your shopping there. This is going to happen more and more. So, I always say to my clients, pay attention. There is no stupid idea. You only have a given time that you're allowed to think, because once you get to 50, I cannot work with clients that are 50. I'm making a generalization, but a lot of the preliminary conversations that I have with clients that are more than 50, 55 is like, no, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. No, that doesn't work. It's like, okay, if you think that all the stuff that I'm telling you, it's not going to work, then probably the problem is not the market or the business that you're in, is that you are a victim of your own knowledge. And so your knowledge has created for you those limitations that you're saying to yourself. And I find this, especially working with architects, that, it's a reality. But to be an architect, I think that you also have to develop, in a way, an ego, because, you need that to fight with the client, to fight with the investors and whatnot, that it becomes very difficult to accept the new. The problem is that the new is happening, whether we believe in it or not. And so, yeah, you gotta keep an eye out. One of the most transcendent experience that I've had in my life, in 2006, I had the chance to meet Richard Rogers in Paris. We went to an exhibition. We went to see him, and he was there. He talked to us, and bear in mind at the time, I think he was already like pushing 80s. You could see he was old. And the guy kept talking about 3ds Max and Rhino. I was in university and I had no idea about the software, so it's like he was there. He knew what he was talking about, and he was like, yeah, we're doing this and that. And I was like, I'm an architecture student and I do not know what this man is talking about, and he was one of the very few architects that I've heard talking that way. Especially, afterwards when I moved to Vienna. In Vienna, it was really like, no, we don't do things like that here. We do our things our way. And so it's normal that then you have a lot of like anonymous architects and a very small number of great architects, right? Because those great architects, they embrace change, they embrace weirdness, they embrace craziness. And again, I'm not trying to pass judgment onto anybody. This is just things that I've observed in my life as a professional.
Mm-hmm. We have a question actually from Christian. Christian, thank you so much for listening. It's always lovely to have you. He says, I'm 65, but what's the point of the metaverse? It's cool and likely fun, but is it helpful? Does it improve people's lives?
I think it's too early to say, but you have to understand that the metaverse is coming in the same way the internet came when it did. And so we can take a wild stab in the dark and say, this is what's going to happen. But I can tell you one thing. For instance, we do not see it now, but the transition from having a phone into our pockets to have it in front of our eyes, or maybe even installed in our, in lenses or something that you keep in front of your eyes, it's not that far off. I mean, there are already people, I know designers that are working for architecture offices and they develop 3D spaces in VR. They spend the whole day with the headset on designing. So, how far are we from making that step that instead of like taking your phone to go to work, you grab you grab a pair of glasses, you put them on, and that's it. That's your headset. You have your phone, you have your credit cards. There are technologies that can track the movement of your eyes. You don't even have to touch stuff. You just look at it, see what you want to confirm, buy it. You're going home, you're in the tram, you do not want to be disturbed, you're watching a movie, listening through your headset, nobody disturbs you. That stuff, it's gonna come. Now, whether it's going to make our life better or worse, it doesn't really matter, because eventually those who come after us, they're going to make the decision whether or not the stuff needs to stay. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah, and I understand, and I think also to add to your point, in that comparison that you made to internet, when it first came about, we were scared of it, just like when we were scared of elevators. I remember that stories of my grandfather, when he went to the first elevator, he was terrified and thought he's gonna die, and now it's like just an elevator, it's just a lift that takes you to another floor. And I think that in respect of how we can apply ourselves to the metaverse, yes, of course, it's this kind of crazy world where we can put into kind of live in a video game, right, environment. And it's not an experience we can touch or feel, but we certainly can experience through our emotions too, and view it. So it is just as real in some ways. But I think that because we yet didn't experience it, we didn't see the application of it, we think it's like a video game. But think about the world's intentions. Think about yourself as a designer and your intentions when you approach a design. There is people out there that don't design just for the look and feel of things. They design for sustainability principles. They design for bettering of people's lives. And there will be these kind of applications in the metaverse as well. Maybe we will be able to experiment with some new ideas or technologies there and see how that adapts to sort of twin society that will be created there, and only then be able to bring it into the real life world. But I think it gives us a freedom as well as designers to experiment with things, and it certainly will manifest. We see more and more projects right now in a real life happening that are breaking the idea or the concepts of what living environment should look like, or a society should look like, etc. And I think that in metaverse is going to be even more possible. So yes, it might be crazy, and we might see some horrible things happen, like I don't know, someone wearing a VR glasses and maybe walking off a cliff because they didn't notice that in the real life there was a cliff. But there will also be good things. I believe in this because people I speak to that are already experimenting with NFT and designing for the metaverse speak about values, speak about their sustainability, speak about solving people's problems. And when I see those designers working in that with these sort of intentions, I believe that there is going to be a better application than just people falling off cliffs in the metaverse.
It is still a risk that most likely will get somebody killed or something, but it's I think it's unavoidable. Like, you always have to think that technology, the way technology makes a way in our lives, it's always from the top to the bottom. For instance, I give you a very simple example: the pager. It used to be a tool used by police and doctors. Then it evolved. It became a mixture between a phone and a messaging service, the phone that now everybody has. Now, for instance, we lived in Israel for 3 years, from 2017 until 2020, and there they were very much advanced with the medical industry. There were doctors that were training themselves using VR headsets. So, this is a beautiful thing that technology can do. It can give you a way to not create any waste, to sort of optimize the feedback loop, by giving you real-time feedback on whatever it is that you're doing. I'm telling you, sooner or later, we're going to have an integration of technologies with our site. That's because, if you're a simple thing, if you're driving your car, right? We use Google Maps or Waze or whatever. Doesn't it make more sense for you to have it right in front of your eyes, overlapped with the real world? If we can find a way to really integrate this in a way that it's not obstructing our view, for sure. There are already people that are trying to figure these things out. Now, if you are younger, like I see my nephew and the sister, they're born with tablets, because they see it, they're shiny, they want to touch them, they scroll. They are in that world already. That's what I meant before, that it doesn't mean it's not important what we think, people like us, because the future belongs to those who come after us. The only thing that we can try and do ourselves is to act in the most ethical way possible, to sort of leave enough resources for them to continue their future. That's the thing that we can do. And like NFTs now, there is a very big discussion about the environmental impact and this and that. But actually, the technology is so good that it trumps every other sort of discussion, and we already use it. We've been using it for years. When you place an order on Amazon, you're basically creating sort of like an NFT. When your order is created, it to basically not being replicated, or for this order not to create a mess with the supply chain. Those orders are unique, and so they get processed in the same way as an NFT does. This has been enabling Amazon to reduce emission by a landslide, just because they did not have to mess up the orders anymore. Now, the most orders that are messed up for Amazon, for instance, are orders that people messed up. And so, when you order something, they say, do not drink on Amazon in the night. If you're too drunk, don't make orders on Amazon, or, things like that. The point that I'm trying to make is that, technology always has that initial wall that needs to be knocked down. And I can give you a very recent example, the electric car. The electric car, when it came to the market, people were like, it makes no sense because it uses just as much fuel. It's just that, it's transformed into electricity. That is true, but you do not take in consideration many things. You do not take in consideration that when you have cars that consume fuel on the street, the emissions are sparse and they cannot be collected. When you have a electric power house that creates electricity, the emissions can actually be contained and they can be transformed. The distribution of petrol, it's very expensive, and it causes a lot of pollution. When you drive a car that has fuel, you spend on average 150 kilometers of the car per year just to go and fuel it. This creates pollution. The electric car doesn't have that problem. So, it's like the conversation cannot be like, yeah, I heard that this is bad and it's bad. No, let's take a deeper look. Let's have a conversation. Let's be civil about it. And let's try to get somewhere. Conversations nowadays are very much about me proving the other person wrong. It's not that. It used to be that conversations were like, okay, let's have a talk, and let's see if we get to a normal agreement, like a common agreement, right?
Exactly.
Sorry,
No, absolutely.
as I told you, I talk a lot.
Yeah, exactly. Speaking of technology, completely interrupted the conversation here, but something I wanted to add to it is that I think it's really hard sometimes when we talk about these great ideas or look at the world's problems to say what's good and what's bad. And for myself personally, I just decide whether it's for me or not. So I don't really.
That's another good way to go on about it.
It's not like there isn't certain topics that I would say I'm completely against. Of course they exist, right? Because there are certain things that we see happen in the world that are super destructive for the ecology, for people and the planet, and absolutely, like for example, trashing plastic into the ocean. I'm a diver, and I it's been probably, I don't know, 8 years of diving that I haven't dived in a place that I wasn't reminded of how much we polluted our planet, and it's always heartbreaking for me.
Yes.
So there's definitely topics that we have strong opinions, but in terms of technology and new advancements, it's about seeing whether it's for you or not. Would I be a person that would put a chip in my eye? I don't know right now if that would be me. However, it would be interesting to see how it works for other people. I mean, I'm kind of fascinated by advancement and progress, and it would be quite interesting to see what would happen if we had this kind of technology. So I think in going back to the topic of metaverse, which relates directly to our audience and where we're at, is very early days, guys. It's obviously been on people's tongues for maybe the last 8-10 months. We will be bringing more of these topics to you as a community as well. I'm organizing a conference for next year, which I will be officially promoting on social media soon. But we have a speaker there that is completely going to dedicate their topic to NFT. And it's in fact an artist who sold their first architecture on NFT. And so it's very interesting to look into metaverse and the topics there. And also coming back to what Fabio, you said about Louis Vuitton and Gucci and all that stuff. These brands are certainly looking for buildings to accommodate their designs, their fashion houses in the metaverse. So there is an opportunity for collaboration there, with what architects can do for all these brands that are wanting to move into the metaverse. And there's also countries right now that are buying virtual land in metaverse. Barbados being the first one that bought its digital twin. Basically, there's a digital Barbados right now. So think about all the incredible construction you can build there.
It's crazy. It
It's
really is
crazy.
crazy.
And also, we did have some comments here as well about, that some of the favorite buildings are built, without CAD, BIM, or VR. True, there are, and we can go and experience them and looking at, the great Tadao Ando or Frank Lloyd Wright and admire. But think about all the buildings that have not been built because we couldn't engineer them into real life reality. Think about all the shapes and forms that architects around the world have imagined that simply could not build because we didn't have the materials to support it or the capacity. And that's interesting that you can actually now walk through spaces like that and experience it, because this will no longer be a limitation in the virtual world. So I'm excited for this topic. And Fabio, you also. So I'm looking forward to where we evolve. And and thank you so much for this conversation. It's been really, really interesting. Tell me, if people want to connect with you or find out more about the services you provide or the conference, where do they go?
Well, they can simply look me up. If you write Fabio Palvelli, you'll find everything about myself. The new website is in works. I hope that I can get it sorted by the beginning of next year. I really hope so. Instagram is the place where I hang out the most. So, come and say hi there.
And is
I'm
it
very
Fabio
active.
Palvelli as well?
Yes. If you Google my name, you'll find everything. I mean, I'm very public about my life. I made my entire business career as a public person. I never wanted to really hide anything from anyone, and so I was always very open about it, about everything that I was putting out there. I really do believe in the concept of like sharing is caring. I have seen in my own life that the things that I was blessed with, they came when I put my heart out, and so I gave away a lot of things to people. If people are interested in working with me, they would have to contact me, and we would have to have a conversation, because it's not like I can work with everybody, and I do not like to sell my services to those that I know that they cannot benefit from it. And so, um, I'm very open about it. Also, when we have a conversation, I tell people I don't think I can be of any help. Yesterday, I had a client from China calling me, and I said, listen, as much as I would like to work with you, I need to be clear about the fact that I have no idea about the Chinese market, because for us ArchViz artists, it has always been a locked away sort of like market. And they were actually very receptive to that. They were like, yeah, we know, it's like we export, but we don't import. So, it's um, but yeah, just Google my name. You'll find me everywhere. Even my email, it's available online if you look for it. I'm hoping to go back to making YouTube videos sooner or later. We are very active on the D2 channel. We're making more like interviews just like this one, where we have conversations with different guests. We organize a lot of like visualization challenges where we give topics to people to create something, to give them something to do which is outside of their job description. I'm very active everywhere. And one more thing, if I have at any point said something that did not resonate with you, or it did not make sense and you think that it's wrong, you're probably right. We look at the world through our own lenses. um, if you did not find my talk inspirational, or you thought that I said something that did not work for you, can I swear on this channel?
I don't know. Can
Then
we?
fuck me. You do not have to consider any of the stuff that I said. It's irrelevant. Do your thing. At the end of the day, most of the stuff that I've managed to achieve in my life, it's because I listened to my own guts. And you should do that too, because we are better than we usually think we are. And so, I just wanted to make this statement so that people say, if they go home and say, I listen to that pighead, I don't like him. Yeah, okay, that's great. Do your thing. You're probably better off listening to your own guts and your own intuition.
But stay open-minded. That's my opinion,
Of course.
At the end of the
I say
day,
that at the very beginning.
yeah. At the end of the day, we're entitled to our own opinions, but being open-minded is what helps us grow. So I think it's very important, and I'm certainly here to grow myself, and these talks challenge and help me grow. So I hope that it's the same for all the listeners. Guys, thank you so much. There's been quite a few of you that stayed through the whole broadcast, whether you're connecting on LinkedIn or YouTube or Facebook. I'm excited to have you. Thank you so much. We are going to come back with new guests on a regular basis now. I don't have a schedule like I mentioned before. It's not on Tuesdays and Thursdays. It happens when it happens. But you will see us on social media, and it's posted everywhere. You can also rewatch them on sarahcolata.com/ArchTalkTank, or just go to YouTube, Sarah Colata, and all the videos forever created are there. So thank you so much, guys. And in fact, if you go to YouTube, do subscribe. I would really appreciate that, because that way you get notified every time we go live, and you can watch us live, interact, ask questions, etc. So thank you so much. Thank you, Fabio. Thanks, everyone. And we'll see you at the next one.
See ya.